Had some things come up earlier in the week where we weren't able to get a show off on Wednesday, but Grant and Ethan are not going to weren't able to make it. They already had their Saturday plans, so we had to call in the reliever. It is playoff season, so I figure get some type of baseball reference in. Hopefully
Absolutely.
Next week we'll kind of have some regular scheduled programming because be able to have Ethan talk more. He's our resident Twins czar on the show here. Talk more about the exciting news that the Pohlads are looking to sell the Minnesota Twins, which was long overdue. Not were they the worst owners in baseball? I don't know if I'm willing to go that far. But ever since Carl Pohlad died, the dad, the patriarch of the Pohlad family who bought the team, since he had passed away, it's been more so. And Hayden, you and I talked about this too after it was announced. They seemed more. You hear players and past players talk about how there are teams in pro sports that want to win championships, and there's ownership groups that are just happy making a profit, and that's
Right.
kind of how the vibe that I have gotten out of the out of Twins ownership over the past basically lifetime of they would much more rather make a profit. They had a tremendous season last year,
Right.
and last year they had some chances to go out and re-sign some pitching, but they chose not to. They let Sonny Gray walk, a couple other guys walk, and it was, still drew a bunch of people to the ballpark. They're still a good team. The pitching is obviously a question mark. They drug their feet at the deadline. They didn't go out and get another starter. The other thing is I'd like to see them do is fire their training staff because none of their stars, they've got probably one of the best nucleuses in baseball out in the field between Royce Lewis, Byron Buxton, and Brooks Lee. None of the three which can consistently stay healthy.
Right.
And it's frustrating, and that's been a problem forever. And it wouldn't matter anyways because when they would come through, they're very tentative about paying them.
Right.
So hopefully they get an owner that's going to be aggressive.
Right.
And be happy. And I'm not saying he needs to go out and be Steve Ballmer crazy and try to. I think you got to find a good balance of trying to find the right guys. But you want guys that have some urgency and that are going to not just ho hum around because I think stability is good, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of accountability within that organization. Of some of the things that Rocco has done with pitching, and I mean this is a baseball overall problem. Is where they've had some strong pitching performances, pitching a one hitter. Oh, he gave up a walk. He's out of the game. But
yeah, I think ownership in baseball as a whole is starting to. It needs more accountability. You mentioned that. You look at let's look at you were talking about is he the worst owner in baseball, and you said you wouldn't go that far. Let's look at Oakland for a second, the Oakland A's, and
he's not that bad. They've gotten us a new stadium. It was in the early 2000s when it was in the early 2000s. There was the possibility of Carl that was gonna sell the team,
right,
or put it up for sale or move. I don't think the Twins are going to move. They draw a great crowd. It's one of the nicest ballparks in all of baseball.
Right.
And the pieces are there. And
100%.
And you asked me if you think they're going to completely tear the house down and rebuild it. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think that's completely necessary. It's just they need a new voice. They need something that will create a little bit of urgency, put some pressure on the guys. A great quote is if everybody's thinking the same, nobody's thinking. And
Right.
I feel like that there's a lot of that going on with the Twins.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, you have the pieces. You got Max Kepler, who's a really good left-handed hitter. Um, Buxton is probably one of my favorite non-Braves. I think he's from somewhere in the Georgia area.
He is from Georgia. Yep.
I forget where in Georgia, but he's from Georgia, so I've always been a fan of his. I remember watching him working a side job in the minor league system for the Braves. I've seen him come through Gwinnett, and I remember watching him when he was in AAA, and he's a really good ball player, and it's translated to the big league level. I've seen him in person a few times. And then you had a really good first baseman in Carlos Santana. I mean, at least hitting wise, offensive wise, he's good. I don't really know much about his defense, but I remember back when the Braves came to Minnesota back in August. I think it was August. I was like, okay, this is going to be a tough series because this is two playoff teams. But the pitching for I didn't realize just how bad, or not bad, but just how much of an issue it was with the Twins. Because I couldn't tell you a name on that pitching. Like if I had known about anything about any of those pitchers that pitched against us, and that's a problem. That's where the problem lies. But you were talking about accountability earlier. It's not Oakland bad, which if you're not Oakland bad, you're not terrible. Oakland, on the other hand, has been. I mean, I don't even think they want to. I don't know if they're in it for a profit. I don't know if they're in it. They're not in it to win, obviously. I mean, if you're content running these guys out there every single night and being content with that and being content with only 5,000 fans showing up, then I mean, I don't know. I don't understand that whole situation in Oakland. But for the Twins, I definitely think it's a good thing for them to be under new ownership. You definitely don't need to leave Minnesota. It's a great baseball city. Minneapolis is a great sports city in general. I mean, you've got the Vikings.
Passionate.
You've got passionate fan base. I mean, goodness gracious, some of the heartbreak that city's been through, and some of their sports fans' lives. It's insane that they continue to show up and continue to believe every single season. You got the Vikings, who are one of the best teams in the NFL right now. You've got the Twins, obviously.
The Lynx.
Timberwolves.
Don't forget about the Lynx.
The Lynx, yeah.
They're in the WNBA finals right now.
Yeah, for sure. You've got the Timberwolves, who played their best basketball in a long time this past season. So I mean, it's an exciting time to be a Minnesota sports fan, and I think this new ownership for the Twins is definitely going to take. Hopefully they sell it to the right people. And if they sell it to the right people, the Twins are going to be able to go to the next level. The AL Central, they had 3 playoff teams this year, but still, I think that race could have been even more competitive had the Twins had the right pieces.
Not
and
completely fallen off. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully the ownership there can get it right, because baseball's fun when we talk about sports being fun when certain teams are good. Baseball's fun when the Twins are good. Because
absolutely,
it's just how it is. You think about a team that you could say, oh, they'll make the playoffs every year, or if you're going to predict like the baseball season, you say, oh, the Twins made the playoffs. Okay, that makes sense. They're always a team that's consistent, and this year we kind of saw some of that consistency fall off a little bit.
That's the thing is like you go back from 2000 to now, of all the teams in the Central, I don't have it in front of me, but they probably have the most Central Division titles.
Oh yeah.
And they have nothing to show for it. There's nothing there that, like, I made the joke earlier. The White Sox, they worst team in MLB history this year. And I made the joke that somehow, some way, they will get to an ALCS before the Twins will. And I don't have a whole lot more to. We'll get more into the college football of the show here, but we ended up going off on a tangent. But
this is what it's all about.
But when I say that, does that surprise anybody? Would that surprise anybody that the White Sox would find a way to make it to the ALCS before the Twins do?
I mean, nothing is surprising in baseball anymore. Um, I, Nothing is surprising. However, logically, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. The Twins are set up much better. But I mean, weird things happen. I That's another ownership group over there in Chicago. Honestly, we talk about teams relocating. That could be a team that could relocate because you are. I mean, I don't
That
understand
would
why
be
they're.
weird.
But if you think about it, how much of Chicago? You've got two baseball teams in Chicago, and you've got one of the most historic stadiums in all of baseball, and you've got one of the biggest fan bases already in that city. At least in New York, you've got the Mets and the Yankees. It's probably 65% Yankee fans, 35% Mets fans, but New York is so big that those 35%, like it carries. And believe me, Mets fans travel. Haven't been to Truist Park many times to see the Braves and Turner Field seeing the Braves play the Mets. Believe me, Mets fans travel, and they will make your life miserable the whole 9 innings. Um, so, I, but in Chicago, there's not a lot of White Sox fans. You look at the stadium, most of the time they have teams like the Yankees, teams like the Braves, the Cubs, the Red Sox, the Twins. Even the Twins travel well too, by the way. Um, they those teams have to come out in order for them to have a crowd. So to me, that's one organization that probably should consider moving, just because like we talk about expansion and relocation. Um, that that that's one team that I mean, you look at I mean, you just had the worst, like you mentioned, worst season of all time in any baseball team ever had. Um, you don't have the right pieces. We talk about pieces. There's nobody on that team that would probably be playing on a big league roster anywhere else except maybe Oakland or Colorado. But it's just a mess there. And I mean, if the owner were to sell the team, the new owner should probably come in and move it to a city like Nashville or Charlotte, where they're looking for a team to kind of not necessarily overtake the Braves fan base, but the Braves fan base expands from basically Georgia to Virginia to Tennessee to Kentucky, depending on where in Kentucky you are.
The
Alabama,
SEC.
Mississippi. Yeah, the Braves country is SEC country basically. I think you mentioned it. I think it was you or somebody mentioned. Um, Alabama Georgia week. Y'all are rooting against each other right now, but come Monday when the Braves are playing for a postseason spot, Georgia and Alabama fans are going to come together, and that's 100% accurate over out here. So, so yeah. Anyway, that's my tangent too. The White Sox need to move. Maybe move to a location like Nashville, Charlotte, wherever there is wherever there's a big baseball market, um, to kind of maybe gain a fan base a little bit, because you're not doing that in Chicago. You're not doing that with Chicago. You're not going to compete with the Cubs ever. No matter how good or bad the Cubs are, you're not going to compete with them.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of Braves fans up here. I think it's also because they were on, for a long time. They were on national television because they were in Atlanta, based in Turner. They were on TBS every night. They were playing on TBS. So there's actually a lot of Braves fans up here. I remember my fourth grade teacher was a huge Braves fan. But like I said, it's a college football Saturday here, so we're gonna get into it. Both of Hayden and myself coming off some rough losses. Michigan's not going to be able to lose this week, thankfully. Alabama, hopefully not. But Hayden, how are you doing? Did you get any? How did you get more texts after Saturday, or do you get more on your birthday?
It's funny. I would probably have to say that there are people that didn't wish me a happy birthday this past year that texted me last Saturday. It was funny because the funniest text I got was from my buddy Brad. I don't know if he's watching, but one of my former coworkers. He's a Tennessee fan, and he texted me with like the big eye wide emoji with like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left in the game, and I was just like, "It is what it is." And then after Tennessee lost to Arkansas, I said, "Misery loves company, buddy." So it was one of those things that, you know, you kind of were able to pick back a little bit. I
You
did
guys could have
get
lit up a misery cigar together.
exactly, and then next Saturday play for the actual Victory cigars. But yeah, I will say people were a lot more tame than I expected them to be. Um, I know one of my buddies who I was actually watching most of the Alabama Vanderbilt game with. He texted me. He's a Florida fan, so he kind of understands the landscape of living in Georgia and being an opposing team's fan. He texted me. He goes, "Man, I'm about to feel really bad for you for all these text messages you're going to get." And it wasn't nearly as bad as it was more of the Facebook posts that I saw that kind of made me roll my eyes more than the text messages. Um, so at the end of the day, it could have been a lot worse. But definitely still got a few text messages.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get much for Michigan. That wasn't my biggest focus of the day. As there's no secret, being the NDSU fan alum that I am, NDSU played UND, in-state rival after UND kicked the crap out of NDSU last year in Grand Forks. NDSU was able to return the favor, so I was like, they won. I would have gotten a lot more flack for that one because I talked a lot of shit that week. And I'll actually be, because they've even got a bigger one next week, which I will be at. My dad and I are going to the game. We got tickets. We're going to the NDSU SDSU, which will be on national television. Hopefully, it's either going to be on ESPNU or ESPN2. We'll probably find out Monday which one that game will be on. So that is one that needs to they play for the Dakota Marker game. And that one is it's been in Brookings for far too long and needs to come home to Fargo. So that one we'll preview next week. But back to this Alabama Vanderbilt game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I texted you after. It was like that game felt a lot like NDSU USD 2015, which I know you have no connection to at all, or probably you read that. I was like, what's this guy talking about? So I will explain this. So 2015 NDSU, they're coming off their fourth national title. This was Carson Wentz's last year, and the week before, it was homecoming week, they played Northern Iowa, which another history lesson is when NDSU first moved into the FCS or moved to the Missouri Valley, Northern Iowa was the top team. They were that team that was consistently playing in the FCS semifinals. They were the team to beat. Right. And NDSU came in that first year in the Missouri Valley and was actually picked the favorites by the coaches. UNI's coach did not like that at all. They've dominated NDSU, and NDSU was able to win a couple of straight. And at the time, I think NDSU was 1, Northern Iowa was like 3 or 4, and a really, really good team. They actually ended up meeting in the playoffs. NDSU, Carson Wentz, that was like the first time it was like, oh, this guy is different. This guy can, like, he had 2 throws that were like over the shoulder catches, like right in the corner of the end zone, like couldn't put the ball any better, place it to win, comeback win, play in South Dakota the next week. Team was not very good at all. They were a bottom. They've been able to kind of come back up the last couple of years, but we're kind of a doormat of the Missouri Valley. And right. NDSU actually came out with a hot start. They got up 14-0, and then they kind of just let off the gas. And I think USD tied it at halftime, and then USD kicked the game-winning field goal to win. And it was a weird game in the Dome. There wasn't a lot of energy. It was just meh. Right. And Carson Wentz ended up breaking his wrist that game, and he was out until the national title game. And so it was going into a freshman. It was just like came out flat. emotional high, low, Alabama beating Georgia. And somehow, some way, Chris Kleiman, who was the coach at the time, was able to rally the troops. Easton Stick came in. It was a flawless transition and find a way to get a win or win out the rest of the way and rally the troops. So, this was it was a wake 'em up game for Alabama. NDSU went on to win the national title that year. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Alabama, but I think they have the pieces there. I think
100%.
They that maybe that's the game that it's like, oh, it doesn't matter who we play, and give credit to Vanderbilt. They're a damn good team. Clark Lee is a damn good coach,
right?
And he's not going to be at Vanderbilt very long. He won't be after this year. That Alabama win alone might get him a new job to wherever. I mean, he might be the next head coach at Florida. Who knows?
It's funny because Peyton looked at me during that game. She goes, "We need Vanderbilt's coach." I'm like, I never knew he, because it was weird because I just kind of, a few years ago, Clark Lee said, "I'm going to bring Vanderbilt back," and I'm like, funny guy. Like, this guy thinks he's got something. You're just there because Vanderbilt can't find anybody better. Okay, maybe they knew what they were talking about. Maybe they knew what they were doing. It just took some time to build it. You were talking about game comparisons. This game reminded me a lot of and it's not just to be cliche, because it just seems like they've been comparing this game all year, all week, or comparing these two quarterbacks. It felt a lot like the 2012 A&M game. A&M was new to the SEC. They were coming into Tuscaloosa. Alabama was undefeated, had just come off a big win against LSU. I
remember that game.
Yeah, a very late.
The TJ Yeldon screen pass. Yep.
The TJ Yeldon screen pass. A&M came in and Johnny Manziel punched us in the mouth first few plays of the game, and our defense didn't respond to it because then our offense struggled. I can't remember if we threw an interception or what happened, but then Manziel went right down the field again, and then he did that weird fluke play where he.
I remember the Vern one of the all-time Vern quotes that you'll always remember.
I can't remember what the quote was.
It was, "In your life, have you seen anything like it?" Or it was something along those lines. Or, "Oh my gracious."
Yep.
That's what it was. "Oh my gracious."
Yep. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, we might not win this game. Now, it took me till that fourth down conversion where Vandy scored the touchdown last Saturday, where I'm like, okay, we're actually in trouble. Like, this something needs to be adjusted. We need to adjust to this offense, or else we're going to lose this game. And that's what happened. I mean, that play, I think, took the wind out of Alabama's sails, and we just couldn't recover from it. But, you mentioned this team has pieces to win a national championship. This team 2 weeks ago just beat Georgia, one of the best teams in the country. They don't have Brock Bowers, they don't have Lab McConkey, and Beck hasn't been as good this season as he was last year. But you still went and you beat Georgia, who's a good football team, really good defense. You put up 41 on that defense and had like 500 total yards, if not more than that. I might be shortcutting us a little bit. So it's there. It is there. So I don't know if it was a sleepwalk game, and thankfully with the new 12-team playoff, you don't want to have those, but you can afford to have those. But we'll find out a lot today in about an hour, just what this Alabama team is against South Carolina. Hopefully, if the defense shows up halfway like it did against Georgia in the first half, I think they'll be fine. But it'll be very interesting to see post Saban what the mindset's going to be of of this Alabama team after a loss. This is the first time in a while where we're playing a team with probably a lot less talent than we have. That I'm like, okay, how's it going to be? Because Saban's not here now. It's reality check day for the
Yep.
post Saban era in Tuscaloosa. It's reality check day.
Yeah. Well, and going back to that fourth down where it was like over the top, that was where I think you said you felt like you were in trouble. I think that was also the moment where it was like that gave Vanderbilt like, oh, we can actually do this. We can actually win, and you could tell that like that just took the wind out of Alabama's sails and it was just. It didn't matter, sometimes, coaches can get into a rhythm. Players were in a rhythm where it was like anything that was going to work for Vanderbilt, it was Vanderbilt's day. Anything that they were going to call, it was going to work. And, you credit the coaching staff, you credit the team, and you learn from it and you move on. I mean, that's probably the best way you can put it. If you're Alabama, And I think if you're Alabama, you have to be ready because you're going to be in some more shootouts because you've got Ole Miss still, I think.
No, we don't play Ole Miss. We have
Or you don't? Okay.
We have
Tennessee and LSU.
LSU, and we have to go on the road to Norman.
Yep.
Those are our three road games that we have left.
Okay. But those Tennessee LSU games, you're going to have to be ready for a shootout because both of those offenses can put up points. But we'll go over to my team, Michigan. It was they're going to be on their third starting quarterback, but it's the same story. Quarterback doesn't want to take care of the football. I will say, if we're going to try to find some positives, I think the offense, it looked like it flowed a lot better. They were able to hit some receivers downfield. I like their use of actually utilizing some motion pre-snap, where it's something they weren't doing a lot of with Orji or Warren. At quarterback, Tuttle, he's a seventh-year guy, which I'm not. I think he probably gives Michigan their best chance to win. He was dinged up all of fall camp. I think that's why he wasn't named the starter originally, is because he wasn't able to practice. And he said Washington was the first time he saw some practice time. And we'll see. But, if you've been in college for 7 years, I'm not holding out hope that you're going to be this set the world on fire guy. I mean, if you're
Stetson Bennett did it. Stetson
Bennett did it, yes. But still didn't even graduate. But he also had an entire NFL roster around him. That's compared to where Michigan does. They've got a lot of good players still, but they don't have the dogs that Georgia has. You can probably get away with that. And Stetson Bennett didn't turn the ball over the way Michigan's quarterbacks have this year.
That's very true.
So, we'll see. The bye week this week, give Tuttle some more reps, get him more comfortable against a very scrappy, tough Illinois team that they got to go on the road to, which is a weird, odd, create your own energy type of place to play. So hopefully they're able to figure it out and, at least get something cooking because they've got all their big game, a handful of their big games left on the schedule here still. So that's all I got for for this week or for last week here. Let's we can go into the Saturday slate, and this is as big of a Saturday slate, as good of a slate that you could have. So whatever you're drinking, I already finished my second cup of coffee. If you got Caesar, Bloody Mary, whatever you're drinking, it's 10 o'clock where you're at. There's about an hour before the game starts here. It's going to be a fun day of college football. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. I'm pretty caffeinated right now. I'll say that.
Yeah.
For today, because it's going to be a long day. It really is. There's a lot of good games on. I'm thankful that the noon slate is pretty weak today. That of all the noon slate is weak because that's when Alabama and South Carolina kick off. So I'll be able to focus a lot more on that game. But yeah, man, you've got I think you've got Alabama, South Carolina to kind of open things up a little bit. Then the 3:30 slate is going to be phenomenal. You've got the Red River rivalry. You've got what's the other game that comes on at 3:30? There's another game.
No, LSU Ole Miss is a night game.
I think
Let's look
you got
here.
Penn State USC. I know at 3:30, but there's another game too that is skipping my brain. But you've got those games going on, and then the 7 o'clock slate is just disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. You've got Florida, Tennessee, which I talked about on my show this week, and I'm not just saying this because my wife's a Florida fan. You've got that rivalry always. The games don't go like they should. The games are always Florida always rises to the occasion against Tennessee. That's kind of how I've always looked at it. And they will probably rise to the occasion today. I am trying to find a good spot with good lighting because they were blowing leaves outside and it was driving me crazy. So sorry about that. But you've got that game. That game never goes like it should. I think the fact that Tennessee's a 15.5-point favorite is absolutely disrespectful to a team like Florida who can show up at any time. And then you've got that's kind of like the appetizer for the 7 o'clock game, right? Like you want to talk about food here. That's the appetizer for the 7 o'clock game, 7 o'clock time slot. Then you've got Ole Miss and LSU, which to me, 100% is a college football playoff elimination game. I don't think the loser can bounce back from a loss in this one because the schedules for both of these teams are not easy. Ole Miss they both have to go to Arkansas, which now we're looking at it. That's not going to be as easy as we thought it would be back in July and August when we were looking at preseason stuff. So now Arkansas is kind of there, just ready to play spoiler. And then I think they both have to play Florida. I think both of them have to play Florida in the Swamp, if I'm not mistaken. So the schedule doesn't get any easier. I know LSU has to play A&M. And then I forget who else Ole Miss has to play. But they had to play Georgia at home. So the schedule's not going to get any easier. So I think today is a playoff elimination game there. And then, of course, you've got the main event game days picked this week. Oregon, number 2 Oregon going on the road. Or no, number 2 Ohio State going on the road to Eugene to play Oregon. So you've got all 3 of those games. And I think we're going to not necessarily learn a lot about teams today, but we're gonna see a lot of. It's going to be the beginning of potential clarity for a lot of these conferences. And then we'll talk about next week. I'm sure we'll both talk about next week on our shows, but next week's even more entertaining than this week.
Yeah, if you planned your wedding on either of these 2 days, you're a terrible person.
Right.
And Joel Klatt said it. You know, if you're close enough friends, you'll see him again. You know, so it is. You know, send him a gift. Say, wish you could be there, but hey, college football.
There's a reason my wife and I last November had our wedding on a Sunday, and it was so we didn't mess with college football Saturday.
There you go.
We had a projector on at our rehearsal, and everybody was able to watch their football. So we accommodated very well that weekend.
That's right. That is good. But, you know, looking at the schedule, you know, Alabama, South Carolina, that one, I think Alabama bounces back. Right. Clemson is another team that I don't think anybody is talking about. That
they're not.
They're really, really good. Yeah. They got, you know, they got their butts kicked against Georgia week 1, but all they've done is quietly just stacked wins, and they haven't been close games. They've handled their business.
Right, and let's talk about that Georgia game real quick. When you mentioned Clemson, my first thought was that Georgia game. That Georgia game now would be a lot closer. That Georgia game now,
absolutely,
I think, would be a lot closer, a lot more entertaining. But yeah, man, you know, I take a lot of flack for the criticism I've had towards Dabo in the past. But let me make one thing clear. I don't dislike Dabo. I think Dabo is a really good football coach. He's just goofy. I think he's goofy at times.
Hickory dickory dock. I'm on TikTok.
Golly. And ever since then, we have not seen him on TikTok again, by the way. Let me just throw that out there. But somehow this guy, even without using the transfer portal and without adjusting to the modern day college football, he continues to he continues to make the world eat crow. I had Clemson going 8-4, 7-5 at the beginning of this year because I just didn't have a lot of confidence in this team, and I had lost all confidence in Dabo. Well, now, I don't know, man. I guess you could say I'm kind of back on the Dabo train a little bit. There's no way he loses this game today in Wake Forest. Well, hold on. Let me knock on wood because there were several fan bases last week that didn't think they were going to lose to certain teams on the road, but I definitely think it's going to be a lot more difficult for Wake Forest to beat Clemson. But yeah, man, he continues to just win with whatever he has, and to me that speaks a lot to coaching. And you know what? If he doesn't have to go into the transfer portal if he just keeps winning. Maybe to take that next step and to fill some gaps, but he's willing to go out there and let these freshmen make their mistakes and get torched and drop passes. He's willing to go through that process in order to help them get better. So, you know what, Dabo, I'm back on the train.
And they've come down to earth a little bit, but I mean, if you go look at like the recruiting classes, Clemson's still up at the top. They're still recruiting at an all-time level. The difference is they had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, both top. Well, Trevor was a first-round pick or a first overall pick. Deshaun Watson was probably could have been in the argument for the number one pick that year or the year he was drafted, and they haven't had. I mean, DJU, who was benched at Florida State, and then Klubnik's been consistent. He's been solid. He's not going to be a first round pick like Deshaun or Trevor Lawrence was, but he's done a good job of taking care of the football, I think, when you look at it.
Yeah.
And they haven't done anything to really put themselves in hard. Yeah, he's only gotten 2 interceptions on the year. He's thrown for 1,200 yards, completing I mean, my math ain't great, but 92 of 143. So he's completing at least 65% of his passes or close to.
Oh, easily. Yeah. And I want to talk about the DJU thing for a second. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent right now, and I know that that's kind of what I'm known for. You were talking about DJU being at Clemson. You look at that real quick. How the heck, with how bad DJU is now at Florida State, how did Dabo manage to win 10, 11 games with that kid at quarterback back-to-back years? That to me blows my mind that anybody could win 10 guys with that guy we're seeing on the field right now. It absolutely blows my mind.
It's because Dabo's a damn good coach. And he's quirky, but guys buy in. He gets everybody playing together, playing for each other. And in such a instant gratification world we're in now, it's like, oh, we lost. Like, winning is winning. You're not gonna win every game. Nope. Every time you roll the ball. Like, teams have to lose. You're gonna lose, but look at what Clemson. They were a decent program, but Dabo, he's won them 2 national titles. He's gotten them to where they're going to win 10 games every year. They're going to be playing in the ACC championship pretty much 4 out of every 5 years. And I mean, sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. I wouldn't complain a whole lot. And with the expanded playoff, you win the conference, you're going to be in the playoff. And if you only have 1 or 2 losses, and depending on who those 1 or 2 losses are to, you're probably going to be in it with 12 games now.
Yeah, it's so hard to win championships year in and year out. But you can always count on Clemson being a contender. You can always count on teams like Alabama, Georgia, Michigan. You can throw into that conversation. Ohio State. You can count on those teams to be competitive. And there's a lot of teams or a lot of professional sports organizations. They have that one year where like, oh, we won the championship that year, so we must be good. But you never really hear a lot about them after that. But then you've got those teams that win that championship, but then also follow it up with consistency of always competing for a championship. And if you're able to do that at any program, that should be enough. That should be enough. Even for Alabama. Yes, Alabama fans, I'm calling you out on this. For those that want Kalen DeBoer fired already. You just got to stay competitive. You're not going to win every single year. You're just not. And that's my TED talk today. I'm fired up this morning, if you can't tell.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot like Alabama, NDSU's guilty of this too, where they've been so spoiled for so long that they act like winning the national title is their birthright. That, I cheer for NDSU. Or Alabama. We're winning the national title. This is our birthright. And if one game goes wrong, fire everybody. This is a disaster. Burn Bryant Denny down. Burn the Fargo Dome down. Burn it to the ground. Start over. Fire the coach. Fire everybody. We need something new. And especially if there's so many and NDSU's trying to move up here, and I'm going off topic a little bit, but the people that drive me insane are the ones that are like, oh, NDSU lost to UND. There's no way they can compete in the FBS. Like, have you watched any of the MAC teams? If NDSU was in the MAC,
they'd win
in this run. So they would win it every year. So it would have been in 2007. NDSU played Central Michigan. And that was when Central Michigan was winning. I think, was it? I don't think it was Brian Kelly. Maybe it was Brian Kelly was the coach. It was either Brian Kelly or Butch Jones. I got to look here, but it was Dan Lefevre, if you remember him. He was the quarterback for Central Michigan. On that, you know who was also on that Central Michigan team? Antonio Brown and J.J. Watt.
Wait, J.J. Watt played at Central Michigan? Did he transfer?
Yeah, he started his career there, and then he walked on at Wisconsin. Yep. And so I think it would have been Butch Jones. Was the head coach. It would have been his first or second year at, I think, maybe it was 06.
He's the only guy that could get that kind of a roster and still manage to screw it up somehow. By the way.
But anyways, NDSU went into Mount Pleasant, Michigan, and beat Central Michigan 44-14. And that was when NDSU wasn't eligible. They were still in that transition period, so they weren't eligible for the FCS playoffs. But went in there, won 44-14. And it's not about being competitive. It's about, raising that level. And, if they get an invite to the Mountain West, which hopefully at some point comes, and at this point, it's just whatever invite you get, you accept it and you figure it out once you get there.
Right.
But football is hard. Football is a hard game. You got to be ready. There's no other sport like it. And because when you're done, you're not going to go when you're 40 years old. You're going to go and strap up the helmet and start playing. Your football is going to be limited to is playing in the backyard after your Thanksgiving dinner and hoping you just keep it down. But it's not easy, and if it were easy, there would be a lot more people playing it and doing it.
Right, 100%.
Somebody's got to lose. Somebody has to win, and it's not always going to be your team. It's going to be how you respond and how you test your resilience. And I think for the most part, between Alabama and NDSU, I think the resilience of those programs have been tremendous.
Oh yeah,
but
100%.
That wraps up that one. Washington, Iowa. That's going to be a nasty slobber knocker of a game. I really like Jed Fish as a coach.
I do too.
He is a really good coach. He's got that fiery personality, very passionate. Going to be interesting to see how Washington does coming off a big win, traveling across 2 time zones to Iowa.
That's a 9
which is always going to be
for Iowa or for Washington.
That is, yep. And you've seen a lot of teams struggle, going from coast to coast here, which we're going to get into in since we're talking about that, Penn State, USC. Penn State traveling across 3 time zones to play USC. We've seen USC struggle against Michigan and a Minnesota because of that, and even Michigan going out to Washington. You saw them come out to get off to a flat start. And USC, this is kind of USC's at a crossroads of their season. USC in their last 12 games is 5-7. And the 2 times that they have gone and played on the road and played a Big Ten team, a big physical team, they were out muscled and they were out physicaled on both sides of the ball. USC, their defense has gotten a lot better, but there's still a long ways to go. And then on offense too, their O-line is not what it needs to be, and that's been Lincoln Riley's problem. Yeah, they've got the nice quarterback, they've gotten the nice skill guys, but since his first year at Oklahoma, and this was Bob Stoops' O-line, because if you remember, Lincoln Riley, it wasn't announced he was taking over the head job until like June.
Yeah, it was weird.
And ever since, you watch his tenure at Oklahoma, the O-line play has fallen off, and they haven't been as good as what they were that first year, because they should have won the national title his first year as head coach, because if you also remember, he's done a good job of battling back in those games, but when the offenses had to move the ball or do get something, they've fallen off. They haven't gone out and executed, because you go look at, I'll go back to his first year at Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. If you remember, the defense stopped Georgia in that first overtime, and then the offense just, for whatever reason, just flattened out. I don't know what happened. They got they weren't able to. And I think part of that is because he doesn't have that consistency of complementary football. They can run the ball. They've shown at times they're able to run the ball, right? But they don't do it enough. They don't commit to it enough to be where they are physical enough in the trenches to go run it when they have to run it.
Right.
They can do it in the first and second quarter, great. But when you got to grind games out, which you have to do in the Big Ten, Lincoln Riley's teams have not proven they have the ability to grind teams out when they need to.
Right. Yeah, that game is interesting, and I talked about it a little bit on my podcast the other day. If USC loses this game, I can't remember what the rest of their schedule looks like, but they still have a pretty tough. There's 2 games that are definitely losable. And I think they already played Wisconsin. I can't remember their schedule off the top of my head.
I have it up. They got to go to Washington. They have Nebraska and Notre Dame. Those are all, and then next week they got to go across the country again, and they got to play Maryland.
Yeah, that's not an easy schedule. Yeah, so if USC manages to go 7-5, 6-6 again this year, and then Lincoln Riley, this is Lincoln Riley's 3rd year there. Eventually, people are going to start talking in LA like, okay, what are we paying you $100 million for? We're paying you $100
2
million.
houses.
Yeah, and you're doing no better than Clay Helton was, who's now at Georgia Southern. The questions are going to arise, but can they afford to fire this guy? Like, can they?
But
If things don't get better, or is he just going to conveniently find a route into the NFL and just go be an NFL coach somewhere? Like, at some point, something's got to give. And what we saw, the Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma versus the Lincoln Riley at USC, we're seeing some similarities, but we're also seeing that him against bigger competition because the Oklahoma was the king of the Big 12. They were before he was the head coach. USC's kind of they've been a contender in the Pac-12, but they weren't. They had kind of fallen off as the big dog after a while. And they hired him to bring them back to that, and now they're in the Big Ten. They're right now they're a mid-tier team in the Big Ten. Like, and to me, the USC's got to figure out kind of where they are at, who they are as a program. If they go 7-5 again this year, and you know the results aren't what they want them to be, so it's going to be very interesting to see how they finish out and what the talk is out in LA about Lincoln Riley's future.
well, and I think he's taken some nice steps, and it's going to take time. But does the recruiting reflect those steps he made, the changes he made on that coaching staff to be where they want to play that more complementary style of football? You need offensive linemen, and I don't know what they're starting on the offensive line now as far as grade level, but taking, improving that offensive line development, it takes time. It does.
Right.
So I think I think he's still okay for now. I think next year, if they're still having those same issues of the physicality and inability to run the football consistently, I think then you're going to start to hear some whispers or some things rising to the top of about Lincoln Riley. And on the other side, Penn State, James Franklin, probably one of the hires of the offseason, and going out and getting Andy Kotelnicki, which mean, look, Kansas misses him greatly.
Some idiot that has his own podcast had Kansas competing in the Big 12. Couldn't have been me.
But that's going to be a good one. And then, kind of scrolling down here, we can talk Red River rivalry. I really don't think this game is going to be close at all. I think, some people could say, last year Oklahoma, but Oklahoma had a good had a pulse on offense. They had Dylan Gabriel, who is a good quarterback.
Right.
But this Oklahoma offense is they're like Iowa level offense bad.
Yeah.
And I think Texas is just on a completely different level. They've got 3 first-round picks, and Sark likes to throw the ball.
Oh yeah.
But they have the bodies up front now where they are so good on the offensive line, and he's such a good play caller of scheming stuff up, of understanding what the personnel is on the defensive side of the ball. Like you go back and you look at that Michigan-Texas game where Michigan would sub out their 2 big D tackles. He'd run it inside. Michigan brought him back in. They'd run outside zone. They're so good. Quinn Ewers, I think, is going to be back this week. And Texas, they're on a mission. This game also, I feel like, could be like what it was 2 years ago when Texas came out and won 49-0.
Oh yeah. Texas is a very interesting team in a really good way. A lot of issues that teams have this year that have been really good in the past, including Alabama, including Georgia, and you could probably you as a Michigan fan, you probably agree to this too. A lot of issues that teams have this year is depth, and I feel like depth is probably going to be what wins a team a national championship this year.
Yep.
And Texas probably has the best guys. I mean, you've got Arch Manning at quarterback, who was able to pass his first SEC test with flying colors. Granted, the spread or whatever. People want to look at spreads. You were like a 35-point favorite in that game, and you won by 3 touchdowns. But still, with a backup quarterback to be able to win by 3 touchdowns in the SEC, regardless of where you're playing and who you're playing, that's a good win. And so if your backup quarterback's able to do those things and able to put up the stats that he has, and then you've got so many ballers at wide receiver, man. I mean, Isaiah Bond being one of them, transfer from Alabama. You've got so many guys. This Texas team, it's insane just how much depth they have and just how, I mean, like I said, that's going to win. That's going to win somebody a national championship. It's going to be the team with the most depth. And I think right now Texas is definitely that team.
Oh, yeah. And as long as Sark doesn't get in his own head, which he has done in some of those bigger games.
Oh, yeah.
I think Texas has to be the favorite right now, and there's a reason why they are number one in the country. They have to be.
And that's when Alabama beat Georgia and they put Alabama over Texas. I'm like, no, don't. Number one, don't put out that rat poison. Don't put the trap out there. But number two, Texas is really good, and to me, until somebody beat them, they didn't deserve to be knocked off at number one. So, but I think today we're going to find out. I mean, I think it could be close for a little bit, but I think at the end of the game, Texas is going to the depth again is going to be the reason why Texas wins this game, and they're going to show why they're the number one team in the country right now. Like, this is Texas time. This is their time to show up and show us that yes, we are the true number one team right now, and you're going to have that again next week. You're really going to have that opportunity next week in Austin when the Dogs come to town to show that hey, you are the best team in the country.
Yep, and moving on here, we'll talk about 3 more games here before we'll do game day style. We'll do our picks here, but the Ohio State Oregon, kind of the game of the week right now that it ended up Ohio State another team traveling across 3 time zones. We've seen this affect teams to an extent. Playing UCLA, but they don't really count. They're terrible.
Garbage.
So bad.
Garbage.
But this is Ohio State. They're a wagon. They are a wagon. I hate to say it, but I gotta call it as I see it. Grant's buddy Derek, who's an Ohio State fan. I had some questions. I thought they were fair about Ohio State this year. But they, for the most part, they've answered that. Their O-line looks tremendous. Chip Kelly calling the plays has been a great hire as well. I knew that was going to happen. Their ability to run the ball has been the difference so far.
Right.
I still think there's a little bit of a question on the defensive line. We're going to find that out. And what is how is Will Howard going to react to playing in a raucous environment? I expect Ohio State to really come out and they're going to try to establish the run early, try to take that crowd out of the game.
Right.
But I think if Oregon's going to want to have a chance, Dylan Gabriel has to play his best game of the year so far. He's been up and down this year. He's been inconsistent. Had some really ugly turnovers. I think he turned the ball over twice in the red zone last week against Michigan State. They can't have that because Ohio State is going to capitalize off that. But and the other part is I think Oregon's going to want to try to play this game if you're Oregon, try to put this game in a phone booth, get into a fist fight and see what Ohio State does because they haven't been challenged this year. How is Ohio State going to be when they get punched in the face? To quote Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until they're punched in the face.
Yep. And with this game, it's funny. I talked about this on my podcast too. Oregon's been battle tested. Oregon has 100% been battle tested so far this year. They had that game against Boise, which if you look at Boise, I don't care if I know they have more superior athletes than Boise, but Boise's a really good football team, and you're able to win that game. You fought a lot of adversity in that game, but you came away the winner. And then they didn't look good in their first game against Idaho. I think they were just kind of chilling and hanging out and just whatever. I don't know, but they were able to win that game by 10 points. then last week, they had some moments where they looked vulnerable against Michigan State, but they still won by 3 touchdowns. So Oregon's been the more battle-tested team, and I think that has to mean something, right? Like, that has to mean something in this game, which I'm sure I'll get to my pick, and we'll get to our picks in a minute. But I really think that Oregon being battle-tested has to mean something and could actually be a difference maker in this game.
Yeah, and Oregon's run defense does worry me. With Ashton Genty ran all over him, and this is for the coaches. This is a big game for both Dan Lanning and Ryan Day because they both have kind of been they've won a lot of games, but they haven't won that big one. I think
right.
Ryan Day. I mean, his record against me, he's 1-3 against Michigan. That's his biggest downfall. But that's the only team he has ever lost to in the Big Ten is Michigan.
That's crazy. I never thought about that.
And the only other regular season team that time he's lost in the regular season is Oregon.
Yep.
And Dan Lanning, you look at him in the Big Pac-12 championship game last year, or even when they played Washington in the regular season. And going back to the regular season game, you could probably say Oregon outplayed Washington, but Dan Lanning got a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too cute, and it ended up biting him in the ass. And then in the Pac-12 championship game, they came out flat. They looked like they weren't ready to play. And they fell behind and they made a comeback, but it was too little too late.
Right.
This game, it's going to come down to, I think, both teams. I think Oregon, they're going to need to have more designed runs and not be as reliant on RPO, which is so much of their run game. They need to have it where it's just, we're just going to hit you in the mouth.
Right.
Type of attitude where, you can kind of take it away to where you can, where Ohio State can just kind of stack that box, I think. But if you call some established runs and say, we need to run the football and not be so much reliant out on the edge, wear that defense out. But, we'll pick it at the end. But I see a world where Ohio State blows out Oregon.
Yeah.
And I see a world where I don't think there's a path for Oregon to blow out Ohio State. I think if Oregon is going to win, it's going to be in a tight one. I think they're going to have to get out to a lead and kind of, if they're able to consistently run the ball, I think they're going to be okay. But and they got to force Will Howard into some turnovers, which is what he has done at times.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say is Will Howard hasn't been forced in the first 4 games to show anything. He's going to be forced to show some things tonight. And if he's able to, pass those tests with flying colors, then okay. But I think we're really going to find out if Ohio State is on that same level as Texas when it comes to depth and when it comes to ability to pass these tests and kind of separate yourselves from everybody else right now that's still trying to not necessarily figure out who they are, but that's trying to find the right word for it. Probably teams that are a little more green, a little more vulnerable. So yeah, if Ohio State wins this game and blows Oregon out, it's Texas, Ohio State. Then there's that little bit of gap, and there's everybody else after that. This is going to be the game where we find out if that's the case.
Yep. And we'll go on down to your neck of the woods. We'll go down to SEC country, the 5:30 game on ABC. I think this is a loser leaves town game. Ole Miss, LSU.
Yep.
Both Ole Miss. This is surprising. Ole Miss is 3.5-point road favorites against this one. This one is going to come down to, this was a very exciting game last year. LSU, there's just something about Brian Kelly that I don't know what it is. He's a good coach. You don't trust him in these games. And it's the same thing though. It's a bit of a maturity thing for both of these coaches where it's like they're really good, but then they just have some just weird puzzling losses that don't make any sense at all. Um, you know, I think this is going to come down to the quarterback play. What are you going to get from Garrett Nussmeier? What are you going to get from Jackson Dart?
Yep. And that game is so interesting to me. This probably might be honestly the best game of the day, in my opinion. And it's getting talked about, but not as much as it deserves. Any other week, this would be where game day's headed. But anyways, I say that to say, both of these teams have shown signs that they could be really, really good, but also both of these teams have shown that they're not very good too at the same time. We saw what Ole Miss did last week against South Carolina. They dominated that game for 4 quarters in Columbia, which was very impressive. But just the week before that, they got outplayed, outmanned, out-physicaled by a Kentucky team that doesn't have – I would probably say it doesn't have near the talent that Ole Miss has. And then you look at LSU for a minute. They're the team that we don't know a lot about. We saw the USC game, and we're like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of problems in Baton Rouge right now. But that offense is still there. The defense is still a big question mark. And if Jackson Dart doesn't shoot himself in the foot, which he's capable of doing, like we saw against Kentucky, then Ole Miss should win this game. But on the other side, Ole Miss's defense – a lot like Alabama, is very undisciplined. So that's what cost them against Kentucky is a lot of third and manageable downs. They get the stop, and then next thing you know, flag on the field for pass interference or defensive holding. You saw a lot of that in that game. So it's all going to come down to that. LSU has a really good offense. Can they take advantage of the mistakes that the Ole Miss defense makes, and then on the other side, can Ole Miss go long enough without shooting themselves in the foot to make this a game? This is a very interesting game. That definitely could go either way. And on my podcast, I froze when it came to this pick because I thought I had one team winning, but then I'm like, I don't know. And I went back and forth in my head, and I talked out the scenarios live, which we'll get to my pick again here in a minute. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting game. I'm excited for this one.
It will be. It will be. Death Valley at night, it's always a great atmosphere. And the last one we got to go to is, it wouldn't be a show if we don't mention Coach Prime, Kansas State, Colorado. A very interesting game, I think. Colorado coming off their best win of the season, where they dominated Central Florida from the word go. You actually saw a semblance of the running game with Colorado, which is something that I've been saying from the week 1 when they played NDSU. They need to run the ball. They need to take pressure off Shedeur. It needs to stop being daddy ball, play a complementary style, because, it's one thing that drives me nuts is when they're like, oh, well, do you see this offensive line? They can't block anybody. They can't run the ball. It was like, well, timeout. So you will have Shedeur drop back 3 times, first down, incomplete, second down, incomplete, third down, sack, and you'll keep throwing the ball. They run the ball 1 time for 2 yards. Oh, no, we can't run the ball. We're done. We're out. And so don't give me that. Colorado didn't know what they had running the football. There wasn't a big enough sample size to say, oh, they can't run the ball. If you at least try to establish it where people have to respect it, it makes it a lot tougher. And Kansas State, they're 3.5-point favorites in this game. Kansas State on the road has not been good. They've struggled with they won by 7 against Tulane. They got blown out against BYU on the road. Avery Johnson, they moved on from Will Howard because of the turnovers. It's been kind of the same issues with Avery Johnson to this point is that he has turned the ball over. I don't think there's been a huge drop-off or big advantage of going with Avery Johnson from Kansas State as much as they thought it was going to be here. Kansas State is going to, going back to the Ohio State-Oregon game, a good way to take the crowd out of it is being able to establish the run. If they're able to, Kansas State can play this game in the phone booth and get into a fist fight, see what Colorado does. And you're going to give up some plays to Shedeur or to Travis Hunter, who's, right now playing at an all-time level. Even Shedeur Sanders is too. But I don't want to do it, but I almost want it would be, and when we do our picks, but like this game on paper, Kansas State should win because I do think they're the best on talent-wise, best team in the Big 12. But their road struggles give me some hesitation on it with Colorado. And Colorado, if they win this game, oh God, I didn't think I would be ready to have. They're a legit Big 12 championship contender.
Yep, and then you've got Colorado potentially. You got Colorado potentially in a college football playoff hunt, which is annoying to think about because, good Lord, I heard about it all off season with Shedeur, with Dion. Oh my gosh, if this happens, be prepared, America. Colorado is going to be talking.
Yep. And we will be on the wrong end of it here, but let's get to our pick. Well, actually, before that, I have an NDSU shirt on, so I do got to talk a little bit about NDSU Southern Illinois. There is also a tremendous FCS game that's going to be kicking off on ESPN2 at 8:15. Montana State versus the Idaho Vandals in Bozeman. Two teams right now. This is a game that I think if Montana State wins, Montana State's undefeated right now. Montana State wins this game. I think they're actually good. I think they're going to go undefeated and win the in the regular season here because their schedule eases up quite a bit. But NDSU, they travel to Carbondale, Illinois to play the Southern Illinois Salukis. Coming off a big win.
What a name.
Bigger one next week. Yep, it's a type of dog.
Interesting.
And Southern Illinois is going to be starting a true freshman quarterback. And they actually are so down on quarterbacks right now that they have a defensive grad assistant that is played quarterback at, I don't know where he played at, but they're trying to get a waiver for him to be eligible to play.
Oh my! That reminds me. Oh my God! That reminds me of a TV show my wife and I have been addicted to the last few years, where we've seen something like that happen. So that's
it happened. It actually happened with South Carolina a couple of years ago. Zeb Nodland was
I remember
he was actually at NDSU. He was the backup for Trey Lance at NDSU, and they were so beat up at quarterback. Shane Beamer's like, hey, we need you to play. But Southern Illinois, they're well coached. Nick Hill has done a great job at that program. And not an easy place to recruit. It's way south. NDSU had like an hour bus ride to Carbondale to once their plane lands, and after their team meal they have like an hour because they're staying like an hour away or something like that. But that offense still put up 500 yards. This is don't let them hang around and believe. Get in, get out, handle your business, and try to at this point it's basically almost don't get anybody hurt. Get a win. I'm not even going to be mad if they come out a little bit sluggish or they play a little bit sloppy in this game, because I expect a little bit of that to happen because you just beat UND. You've got look ahead week, but it's because I would much rather them struggle this week then they struggle next week against South Dakota State. So,
oh yeah, 100%.
get in and go get a win, find a way to win, and get ready, healthy, get ready for South Dakota State here. But we'll go to the picks. We'll pre all the games here that we got. So we'll start South Carolina, Alabama.
I mean, of course, I'm never going to pick against Alabama. Just play good defense today. Offense, do what you've been doing. Go out there and get it done. I don't know if they covered the 21.5. I don't really care if they cover the 21.5, to be honest with you. Just go out there, win a comfortable game. If you win comfortable, if you beat them by 2 touchdowns, I'll feel pretty good going into Knoxville next week.
Okay. Yeah, I got Alabama. I got the Tide rolling. Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma. Who you got? I think we both I think I speak for both of us when we say Texas and Texas covers.
Yeah, I think it'll be a late cover. I think the first half to first 3 quarters, I could see it being a competitive game. But at the end of the day, yeah, Texas is the better team.
Okay, Penn State, USC.
This one's so interesting because everything points to a USC upset. But at the end of the day, I just think Penn State's the better team. I think it's going to be very close. But I think Penn State, just at the end, is too physical. And I still don't think USC knows how to match the physicality in the Big Ten.
You know, there's parts of me that agrees with you, but the other part is USC's at home. James Franklin already whining. I still don't have all my faith with James Franklin.
I don't either.
I think traveling across 3 time zones. Give me the Trojans. Give me the Trojans to pull the upset here. And then we did that one. All right. You know, you have a Gator fan in your household. You know, we'll pick this one. Florida, Tennessee.
Listen. Like I said, the spread is ridiculous. I'm going to take Tennessee to win this game just because it's in Knoxville. And to be honest with you, as an Alabama fan, I would feel more comfortable if Tennessee won this game because I don't want to go into Knoxville with them off back-to-back losses with a nothing to lose mentality. So I would feel a little bit – it would ease my anxiety going into Knoxville next week if Tennessee wins this game. I think they do, but I think it's close. I think touchdown, maybe less than that.
All right. The Georgia Bulldogs versus the Fighting Brandon Walkers.
Going with Georgia, obviously. That one I don't think is going to be close, but I'm interested to see how Georgia comes out and plays. You've had 2 games where you're playing far inferior opponents at home back to back, coming off the Alabama game, and you got the big game next week at Texas. Is this a look-ahead game? Does Georgia get by and win by like 2 touchdowns? Or is Mississippi State just so bad that, you know, they're going to be the reason Georgia wins by like 35? That's what I'm interested in seeing there. I probably will watch 0 minutes of that game today. I might watch like 5 minutes of it, but.
Yeah, you got to check the score a little bit. Kansas State, Colorado.
I don't want to do this. It goes against everything I believe in. This game's in Boulder. Kansas State struggled on the road this year. I got to go with the Buffs, man. I do. It's going to be close. But, look, I still don't believe Colorado's a good team. I don't. But they're good enough to win this game at home. Kills me to say it, but I think they're going to win it.
Yeah. I don't want to do it either, but I think until I see Kansas State, I might even put a Kansas State shirt on while I'm watching this game. I don't want to do it, but calling balls and strikes, being the unbiased podcaster that I am, I gotta go with the Buffs to take care of business here. But we'll go down to the FCS quick here. So I know you follow it pretty intently here. well, let's see here. We got to go with the nationally televised game. Idaho at Montana State. Let's see here. We'll go to the Big Sky. I'm pulling it up on my iPad right now. Let's see. I don't know what the spread is on that one, but there we go. It is. Montana State is a 9.5-point favorite over Idaho. Game's on ESPN2. Game also starts at 10:15 Eastern time. I know you want to stay up for that one.
Oh, absolutely. I probably will be up for that one. I'm going to go Montana State at home. But I don't
Montana
think
State at home?
I don't think they cover.
Okay. Yep. I am in agreement with you. You elite FCS mind there from Hayden McDaniel here. Well, just so we'll kind of even it out. We'll go down to your neck of the woods, see if we can find a FCS game, but I think I found one. Nickel State versus Incarnate Word. Game is at Incarnate Word.
Well, okay, I have not followed either of these teams this year. What are the records?
It just jammed or glitched out on me. I think I saw that. I think they're both like 3-2, or one team's 3-2, the other team's 2-3.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Incarnate Word. Why not?
Okay, Incarnate Word, the word. And then, obviously NDSU Southern Illinois. Who you picking? Choose wisely.
NDSU. I just think we, especially now looking back at that Colorado game where they competed against Colorado, who's shown to be a decent football team. That loss isn't looking so bad. So I'm going to go with NDSU on the road here because the environment and wherever Southern Illinois is at isn't going to be quite the environment it was in Boulder, Colorado.
And I still contend. I will go to my grave saying NDSU should have won that game.
Absolutely, they should have.
But that's a podcast for a different day here, as we're pressed up against it before. This has been a good show. We got about 8 minutes to kick off here. But let's go back to the we got to go back up to FBS here. So we'll start with Ole Miss LSU.
This game's in Death Valley. I think at the end of the day, that has to mean a little bit of something. I'm going to go with LSU to win this game, but I think it's very close. This is probably my least confident pick for the whole week, just because I don't trust LSU 100%, but I don't trust Ole Miss either. But so I'd rather go with the team I don't trust. That's the home team on that one. So I'm going to go with LSU.
Yep. I've bounced back and forth with this too, but I think you said, Death Valley at night. That's got to mean something, and they're not playing Alabama. So give me the Tigers. Give me the Tigers. And to end this show, so thank you, Hayden, for joining us. We might have to do this again sometime. A little Saturday pregame show if the schedules allows, but I only have like probably one more week of it potentially for a while, hopefully for a while, because the Trinity Titans, where I coach at, we clinched a playoff spot last night, so we will be we got 1 week of regular season left. We will be playing the and then we'll be on the road for our first game, and hopefully we're able to kind of stack some wins together and keep the season going. But my Saturdays will be booked up here, hopefully for the next month after. But it is Ohio State, Oregon. Who are you rocking with?
I'm still on the podcast. Again, we talk about all this stuff about how good Ohio State is. I picked Oregon to win the Big Ten. You were on that show. You came on that show with me for me, and I picked Oregon to win the Big Ten. They haven't looked great, but they're still in it. They're still They're still in the contention for it, and until they prove me wrong, I'm gonna go with the Ducks. I think it's very close though. It comes down to probably a late game interception. Oops, did not mean to do that. But yeah, so I'm gonna go with Oregon.
Okay. You're rocking with the Ducks. I am probably I've bounced back and forth right now. I don't know. I don't think I've seen enough from Dylan Gabriel. I think Chip Kelly. I think Keyshawn Junkins. I think Travion Henderson. I think Ohio State steps up and answers the call. I think whatever the spread is in this game, I think it's 3.5. Ohio State's a 3-point favorite. I think this game is close throughout. I think Ohio State controls it for most of this game.
Right.
And I think they are up by 3 with 6 minutes to go. And Ohio State, if you are a national championship team and you're able to run the ball the way everybody is saying, you talked about how much tougher you guys are this year. You go out and you grind this out, you go down and score, you make it a 10-point game. So I think Ohio State wins 34-24. And man, do I have to end a show that way, picking the Buckeyes. I don't want to do it, but I got to go with what my eyes tell me. And Ohio State is I think is able to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either way. But with this game being in Eugene, I'm curious. I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for today in general. Currently watching College Game Day as Curve Street has to do his picks from his private jet because I think by the time College Game Day is going to end, there's not going to be enough time for him to get down to Dallas for the Red River rivalry. So he is currently.
Oh, that's the game he's calling. I thought he was doing Ole Miss LSU.
No,
that is a quick turnaround. Holy crap!
So he is currently on his plane to Dallas from Eugene, making his pick.
Oh wow! Awesome. But our show was way better than Game Day. It was way better than Big Noon Kickoff.
Absolutely.
We were rolling.
Pat McAfee has nothing on
Thanks.
That.
Yeah, that's right. Hayden, you can. Thanks again for joining us. Plug your stuff. Tell us where they can find you.
Yes, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, which I barely use Instagram anymore. Find us on Twitter at Armchair Banter 1. Facebook is Armchair Banter. YouTube, Armchair Banter, and TikTok. I'm actually just my own name. I think it's at Hayden McDaniel 14. But I'm working on changing that to just the Armchair Banter TikTok channel. But anyways, yes, thank you for having me on. Always good to come up here and talk shop with you. And hope we can do it again soon because it's always fun.
Yes, it is. And thank you guys again to everybody who tuned in. We'll talk to you next time.